Man, thank you for taking time to hang out. I'm so pumped because I've been a Lotus Butte fan for many, many years, and
Right
this is
on.
very exciting to finally have you on the channel. Welcome.
Appreciate you having me. Honestly, excited.
It's a different one because we, as a channel, started as like a reaction channel. We focused
Hmm.
on that during COVID, but you guys don't really do the music video thing that often, and so you haven't been featured on our channel very much, except for us talking about you, but never actually like reacting.
Okay.
So it's cool to like get
Sure.
you on and talk about this because I feel like you have such an important place in the current heavy music scene.
Appreciate you saying that. I'll do my best to give you something fun to react to in real time
Yeah.
during this
What?
conversation.
Yeah, I'm the boring one of the channel. I'm not very reactive. I rather talk than pull faces,
Cool.
so
Perfect.
that's
I
okay.
famously really enjoy talking. So yeah,
Look,
happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
let's. I want to jump straight into the album because
So
I've had it for a few weeks to delve in and really give it a deep spin. And my goodness, you've done it again. You've managed to bring what makes Lotus Butte magical and special into a new format. Well done.
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we're pretty proud of the way things turned out and excited that people are receiving it well and weren't certain at different points that we would have the opportunity to continue doing so. So honestly, it's been a fun few years turning back into a band post COVID
Sure.
and making music again and being genuinely just excited about doing so. So yeah, it's been really good.
It's cool. Like obviously the album isn't out for another 2 weeks ish, but the
Hmm.
you've done the release schedule in a quite a unique way of releasing these like little capsules, I want to say, for lack of a better term. Um,
Yeah.
with the concept behind that to allow the album to be digested a little bit more, because it is a very complex, compact album.
Yeah. I mean, I want to say that that was the only motivation, but it was sort of a secondary one. I think we're just we've always been interested in unconventional rollout and giving people the opportunity to dive deeper into whatever we've created in our passing off to them through different, contextual pieces and references listed explicitly and to try to do things a bit more, I don't know, something that is interesting to us, but also rewards the people who are interested in us as well and who dig a bit deeper. And this was a way of doing that. And I think in another on another aspect to just like I don't know, buck with the trend of music consumption in the 21st century and in the era of streaming and yeah, so it was kind of manifold the reasons why we did it, but you're right in that there's a lot going on, and we wrote the record in like the structurally with those five pieces in mind as sort of separate things that fed into a greater narrative and the album as a whole. So releasing it that way made sense to cue in let people or cue people into the intention behind structuring it as such. We've done like every record we've done has kind of had some sort of some sort of structure to it,
Yeah.
but every one but this one, I think we've intentionally cued into its existence in the way that the tracks are listed and the punctuation and the sonic differences between certain songs and other songs that like transition you from one point to another point, and that doesn't happen on this record really. So releasing it in chunks that way, I think gave us an opportunity to let people know that's how it was conceived and built and give them the opportunity to dig a bit deeper, have the songs for a little bit longer. And it's been I don't think that like everybody has loved the process by which they've been given the record this time, but by and large, I think people have really enjoyed that opportunity. So it's been fun for us. It's great. It's weird, like we're talking about the record coming out in 2 weeks, but every time I start to talk about it, I do so as though the whole thing were out because it kind of
Sure.
feels like it is, even where two tracks have yet to see the light of the public. So
It is an
yeah, it's
interesting
been cool.
thing. We discussed this with our friend Maddie from Memphis Mayfire because they, on their last album, released every single song as a single, and the final
Mm,
single came out the day the album came out. And I was
yeah,
like, it's such an interesting way of releasing music. He's like, that way every song gets the love it deserves. There's no filler tracks, there's
sure.
no B-sides. You guys have never had filler tracks. There's no album, there's like, this song's on there just to make it 10 songs.
Right.
When you sat down to write No One Was Driving the Car, was that something that you were like, I want to write with the theme of these tracks, and actually having 5 acts? Or did it kind of come together as you started piecing the stories? What's that process look like for you? Because you do
Sure.
write in such a unique way.
Yeah, so the early infancy of records comes from observation in the between time post a record being released, when we've sort of like excised that thing from our brains and have a clean slate. I just tend to collect information, stories that
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure why I feel attracted to them, or why certain ones stick around and others fade out over time. And eventually I think I start to understand a through line between them, and that um, helps me understand what the next thing I'm interested in talking about is. And I usually by that point have a title and pitch the idea to my bandmates. And because I've sort of formulated this thematic narrative in my own head and in notebooks at home in the before time, I have a pretty clear idea of what I want to include and how I want to group things together. So I pitched the record to my bandmates happening in 5 acts that way, and I knew more or less what would go where, although things inevitably transform when I introduce them to my bandmates and they start translating the idea into music. It'll sort of change how I might conceive of an individual story once I hear what they've written when we're in the in a rehearsal space writing together. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's the structure as a whole. We did some moving around on this one. The record initially started with the fourth track on the record, Environmental Catastrophe Film. At least that's how I'd like had it structured in my head. But in the studio, we kind of realized that we needed to adjust that. We wanted to maybe do something that was unconventional for us and just drop you kind of in the middle of the storyline itself, and scale back a little bit later to do a full introduction of the themes. But yeah, we have a full fucking dynamic map. We like know where we want the peaks and valleys to be. We know more or less what songs we want to be the high points, the fast, heavy ones, and the slow, quiet, withdrawn, sort of contemplative ones. So we know pretty early on, at least with the majority of the records that we've done. Wildlife was for sure that way. Rooms of the House was that way. Panorama transformed the most of all of them, I think. But this one, we were like we knew what we wanted to happen and where we wanted it to happen, and we built the songs in that way.
Has the way you've gone, like, I know it has changed since Somewhere to now, the way
Mhm.
you've approached writing albums has changed pretty dramatically. What about a storytelling perspective? Looking back on, as you said, you found these stories, you've collected them, and how you want to like, kind of like focus on them next. Looking back on those albums, is there anything there that you look at and you're like, why the fuck did I write about that? Because that means nothing now? Or do you stand by everything you've written and being like, that's a story I'm still really interested in and enjoy discussing?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the songs that I think I have some lingering second thoughts about are the ones that I think arrived at an early point and with the confidence of a younger person, just the sort of like way you feel things pretty powerfully when
Yeah.
you're coming of age. And there are some songs that I feel much less connected to as an
Sure.
older person that I have some regrets, not necessarily about writing how I wrote or telling a particular story, but I
You just don't
guess the
relate to them the
like,
same way now.
yeah, like the confidence you feel that you're really capturing a helpful or important emotion to get older and look back on certain things that maybe represent a time in your life where you were confident about something that you should not have been, that ultimately in with the power of hindsight you can like sort of see the damage that particular mindset had on you, which makes you a little aware of the fact that you've not only created these things for yourself to process that particular feeling, but you've introduced it into the public forum. So like people might have taken a lesson from that song that you hope now they did not or wish they wouldn't. But I also think that's like pretty dismissive of people's ability to contextualize and incorporate information into their own lives and process things in a
Yeah.
healthier way than I did. But
I don't know if
I
it's
don't
even
know, for the
like a
most part,
healthy perspective. I think there's also the way someone interprets it might be completely different. And like based on your experience, it might actually be something that is
100%.
useful for what their lived experience. You never
Totally,
know.
totally. Yeah, and I think I had to learn that the older I got. There were times that I was pretty reluctant to play songs that we had written that people really loved because of that
Do you have an
concern.
example?
And I think that the song Andrea comes to mind is a song that I think that
Sure.
just like in hindsight, I mean there are aspects of it that I enjoy. I think it's a very fun song to play, and I'm not necessarily I don't have any ill will towards the song itself so much as I just like kind of cringe a bit at the perspective represented by that song.
Yeah.
But I also think that like two things that I've had to learn as I've gotten older, and one of them is what you said is like art is subjective, and a person's relationship to a song that we've written is significantly different than mine, and I'm always surprised and I don't know, happy to find that people use them to process events in their life that are dramatically different from my own or from the feeling that inspired them. So that's part of it, and the other part is like recognizing that you make a thing permanent when you write a song. You take a snapshot of your life at that point in time, and to feel, I don't know, bothered by it in hindsight is, I think, a bit silly the older you get and the more you understand how everything that you've encountered, everything that's happened to you has led you to a different place and to be a different person. And uh, sure, I would write certain things different if if I were to take one of the stories on a record we wrote when I was 21 and do it now at 38, then it would be very different. But like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You capture a moment in time and in your life and in the environment around you, and you needed to do so in that moment because you needed to do that, I guess. I don't know. So like, I think it's pretty silly to spend a whole lot of time looking back and beating yourself up about something you might have done differently, given that you did capture something and people take something from it, and that's ultimately what matters more.
I also think I'm big on like experience negating regret. I think everything you've done leads you to where
Hmm.
you are now. So if you hadn't have written those songs, you hadn't have had
Yeah,
that experience. And same with the audience. If you hadn't have written Andrea,
totally.
it might not have led someone to discover Rooms of the House. It might not have allowed
Right.
them to delve deeper further down the track. And so as you and your art's grown more expansive and probably more in line with who you are as a person, so too do those people kind of grow and get to experience that with you. As I said,
I
I've
think
been
that's
there
a
since day dot, and I've been able to sort of like watch the change in the way you storytell and the way the band releases music. But I too have grown in the same way, so it's cool. It's like
yeah.
everyone growing in the same
I think
direction
that's
together.
I think that's very insightful and very true. It took me a little bit to like internalize that
Sure,
fact.
yeah, it
And
is
I'm
hard
definitely,
because
like, yeah, I don't
you
know.
do
It's
put yourself out there.
you never really think about when you first start, you never really think about like you're not motivated by the potential reaction. You're motivated by a need or a want to be a part of creating something and a part of for us at least, like the community around it. So uh it's but then you do so and you air very personal feelings, or you share stories that might not even belong to you because made you they had an impact on you in one way or another, but you're not really thinking about the fact that then somebody's going to listen to it until you're done,
Yeah.
and then but like it is what it is, and I think it's valuable to have all eras represented, and to think less about what you might have done differently and then think more on what that allowed to happen down the line for you or for someone else.
So does that come into the story when you're writing new music now? Are you thinking about, okay, in 15 years again, I might be looking back on this. Is this something I stand by? Or are you very much just focus on the
Nah,
moment, doing what
yeah.
you want to do?
I'm just like, so you'd think that it would play a role in the process, but I just become so, I think we all do become so fixated internally on what we're working on that like any outside consideration just dissipates. And I think it has to be that way for you to make something you're proud of, something that represents your authentic self, and you can figure out what you feel about it when the time comes. But in the moment, you're just like, there's nothing else in the world for you to spend your time obsessing over. So you just follow that impulse. And I think only really about what my bandmates think, truthfully, when we're making music, because that's the one like threshold I think we all need to cross to feel comfortable being done with a project,
Sure.
is the excitement that you feel coming off the people that you're working with. And that's really all I think we think about outside of what's going on in our own individual brains.
That's a cool way of viewing it, is like, as long as everyone in this experiencing this right now is enjoying it,
Yeah.
that's all that matters. Because I feel like you're going to look back on that and remember that the experience of doing it together and releasing
Yeah,
it together, what you were all feeling, rather than like I'm sure you have that looking back at older albums, being like, oh, like maybe I don't resonate with that as much, but that experience was really cool and that reminds me of this time. And I think that's the beauty of music. It
totally.
transports you back to a moment, an era. I can hear songs that I don't resonate with anymore, but I'm still like, oh, that was a jam and I loved that when I
Yeah,
was
yeah. It's
X amount of years
deeply
old.
nostalgic, and like, yeah, that's definitely my experience with every sort of landmark in our band's history, is that it's like going back and listening to these songs or playing these songs, and especially ones we hadn't, we put on the shelf and didn't play for a long time, and then you start to remember the moments in your life that inspired them. But more than anything, I think you think about the time you spent with those people, and
Yeah.
what that allowed the rest of your life to be, and the experiences it opened you up to. So yeah, it's like flipping through a fucking photo album. I feel that way about the bands I love. Like some of the bands that had the biggest impact on me, I hardly ever pull out of the record sleeve or put on my whatever Apple Music, but
Yeah.
when I do, it's like it's time travel. You're just like instantly brought back to the way you felt when you were at that age and you encountered it. And I think that can be really uh helpful to
Yeah.
remember what it was. You know what I mean? Like I think it's easy to get jaded and to be cynical about the world the older you get, but uh having that connection to whatever this is, punk, subculture,
Yeah.
hardcore, whatever, like really grounds you in not, yeah, in the feeling that inspired you to pursue it as a passion and as a career in the first place. That was like part of, I think, what made this record process what it was for us, was like we came out of the pandemic quarantine, not being able to see each other, be in the same room, write music, play in front of an audience of people for so long, and we came back to playing anniversary shows for records that we'd done when we were younger. And it was a
Yeah.
really like, I think we all had moments on the wildlife tour we did, the first tour we did back, where we were just like, oh yeah, like fuck, this is like, you remember how much of a part of you it's become over the years, and you remember what made you so reckless you decided to get in a van and tour for 2 months doing DIY shows and sleeping on floors
Yeah.
for so long, and like that's been a really good thing for all of our mental health, for the way we interact with each other, and for the way we approach music. And this era of our life is just like, it's just fun. And it like gives me something, a sense of fulfillment to do it with the people that I love the most and that know me best. So
Yeah, that's
it's
right.
been really cool. It's been a good, like, clear all the bullshit away and just like have fun making music again.
Doing those anniversary tours where you're playing an album like Wildlife in full and you're airing songs that never really got to see the light of day previously, because you obviously have like a select time window to play 3 albums worth of stuff.
Sure.
Playing those songs, did it make you think differently about writing the upcoming album, knowing
Mhm.
that all of this may at some point get played live? Or is that how you approach every album anyway, from a storytelling perspective, being like, these are all going to be played at live, like at one stage, they all need to be important?
Yeah, no, we like, to us, I think what we're doing when we're writing music is writing an album. I think that like we really consider um the full lengths, especially in our catalog, to be like whole entities separate from everything else and
Yeah.
really dependent on the order of the tracks to feel exactly how we intended it. So I think we feel pretty confident that we know. I mean, we know what songs are gonna like be the ones to play live, like we have a sense of like, oh, people are gonna really fucking love this or sing along to this part or whatever. So they sort of instantly become
How do you
part
pick
of the
them?
rotation.
Do you go by the crowd's going to love this, or do you go by we have to play this night in, night out, we have to love this?
I mean, it's easy when you love every song. It's easy when you're like
Great, good answer.
trying to pick, we've had conversations we were just in Europe in July, and we had a conversation, myself and Corey and one of our crew members, about like, you know, we're this far removed from the recording process. What's our favorite? And it was just like everybody in the room was like having a hard time picking between 5 different tracks, and
Go.
it changes. So it's like, there are very few songs in our catalog that I'm like, "Mm, let's not play that." And those are the ones generally that I'm like, I don't know if I can play that because there's a lot of words, and
Yeah, I don't remember that.
they happen really fast. So I don't know. I'm getting older. But no, we're we have an idea. You have an idea, like, you write a song. I mean, whatever. This is not off the new record, but like we wrote King Park, and we were like, oh, this is gonna like, people are gonna connect with this. This is like big, impactful, has this powerful climax, whatever. So it's pretty clear that that song was going to be
Yeah, you know everyone's gonna be
one that people
screaming that
love.
end bit back at you.
Yeah.
Sure.
But we also didn't play it forever. We kept it locked away, and it took us a while to like decide to indulge people and play the song we knew they wanted to hear for one reason or another. And but yeah, I don't know. Like when we were writing this record, it was pretty clear which songs were going to be like the most impactful live and the fan favorites. But we we build set lists around the ones that we want to play, and with a similar consideration of how they move the set list
Yeah.
from beginning to end. So um it's a combination of all things, I think.
It's also, I imagine, getting harder and harder because there's some long songs on this new album. They're not like 3 minute singles. There's some quite long trending
Yeah.
tracks, which will be harder to tie in, particularly if you only get like a 50-minute set.
Sure.
There's four
Yeah, I mean
songs.
that construction, particularly at like festivals and support shows, can be a bit tricky for that reason, because you're like, oh, can we really dedicate an entire quarter of this set to playing an 11-minute song or whatever?
Yeah.
And like, that doesn't feel. Hold on one second.
You're right.
Just realized that I locked my partner out of the house when she barely didn't have her key on her. So she walks in the back of the frame. But
That's okay.
yeah, so it can be like it can make it, you're putting a puzzle together, and sometimes you're like, maybe we shouldn't write 12-minute songs. And the thing that I think about more often than not, and I try not to like consider it too much, although there was a time when I did, is the amount that I'm trying to say in a limited amount of time, and
Sure.
like
Yeah.
you have to like be aware in the moment you're writing that you're gonna have to do it live and on stage while
Remember all those
moving
words.
and remember 8,000 fucking words.
Yeah.
But I also like sort of gave up on that this time around because it just feels like a limiting thing. You're ultimately motivated by making the best album you can, and performing is obviously a massive part of our lives and something that we love deeply, but the real like motivating factor is making certain that we've made the best song and record that we are capable of making sure everything's in its right place, and then all the all the considerations of am I going to be gasping for breath on a hot festival stage kind of go out the wayside, and it's just like, yeah, fuck it, it's punk rock, so if I can't breathe, I can't breathe, and
What's more
we'll
punk
we'll,
than
we'll
gas with air
yeah,
on stage?
asphyxiating, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
truly,
So, so punk rock to do
yeah,
on stage.
so punk.
Are there any stories that you've had in your back pocket that you've wanted to tell for a time and you just haven't found the way to do it yet? Because there's such a scope of records. You've written so many different
Yeah.
stories that cover different things. Is there anything there that you're sitting on that you're like, I want to approach this and I just don't know how to do it?
Not so much I don't know how to do it as I'm not sure if it's right for this, like there
Yeah,
there
sure.
were there were other when I originally pitched this record to my bandmates, I thought that it would be 18 or 19 tracks, and um I was pretty confident of what I wanted to say where, and that it would require that many to do so, and as we went on, you sort of like start to things take further they're further defined when you introduce things to people, and you start to like recalibrate based on what your bandmates are writing, and there's like a pretty transformative like back and forth collaborative process for us where we go here, I go, here's the story, and then we start crafting it around that with mood and tone, and
Yeah.
whatever, however many beats there needs to be to say what I want to say, and then the music starts, and then I sort of have epiphanies hearing what my bandmates are producing, and that'll sort of change where my focus lies. And on this record, I think that happened quite often where I would like start to understand that maybe something I was trying to fit in didn't quite connect the way that other things did. So there are some that I put on the back burner, and we focused on the 14 that became the record, and they might carry on to the next thing if there is a next thing, and I assume there will be, depending on if they stick in my brain that long, and if
Yeah,
they don't,
sure.
then they're
They weren't meant to
yeah. So
be.
it's just like, yeah, and we've had that in the past where like I've had an idea for something that didn't show up, or a lyric idea, even a specific line that I think I probably couldn't figure out how to work in, and scribbled down somewhere, and then found value in it when we started on a new project and worked that in.
Is there any
So,
tracks on the album that once you brought to your bandmates changed like tonally or the way the song where you first envisioned it, how it turned out?
yeah, I think the song Saturation Diver
It's my favorite
was
track of the album. I'm really glad you said that.
hell
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome. I'm glad that that's your favorite track. We had a conversation too, or in the studio about that song in particular, where we're like, this is the one that's going to be our favorite,
Oh,
and
great.
people
Well, we're on the same
probably
page. Yeah, I love
won't
it.
connect to it, and then yeah, so that's cool to hear. But that's a song that I think that we had like I had a pretty specific idea even about what I wanted to talk about. And as they started writing music to it, it became much more pared down and it became considerably less overt in its subject matter and less one story than sort of a feeling captured. And that's one that changed quite a bit. For the most
Interesting.
part, I think that the rest of the record is like pretty true to how we'd envisioned it happening immediately, and it helps that like we have a dynamic structure, like we have that all mapped out beforehand, so we know what's going to be like fast and heavy and what's going to be more withdrawn. So, um, but yeah, everything changes a little bit. Some things change more. That one I think shifted quite a bit in the process.
Do you, this is, I know, probably an inane question, but how much do you guys clash when it comes to like getting that structure and the feel of the album? Is there ever times you like the one member from whatever reason is like it needs to be heavy here, I want to do this, or is it written from the sake of art's perspective and it's for the art, not about the ego?
The latter for sure. I mean, there are times when like people might contribute a part that feels precious and that ends up like maybe not fitting the the map the structure and there's I wouldn't say that people haven't like in the past been like pretty bummed out about something's omission when we move forward, and that's just kind of the nature of five people making decisions. And
Sure.
you could become married to something you've written, you visualize it because you keep hearing it in your head that way, and maybe not everybody feels that same way. I think it does help that like ultimately we're working in service of the overall project, and what we expect it to be is pretty outlined from the outset. And I think also credit to my bandmates. I think everybody is like has a confidence in my like ability to frame things conceptually and to tell a story in the same way that I have full confidence in their ability to do what I can't, and that's to translate it into music and to sound. So I think that ultimately it sort of defaults to if this is what needs to be there for how I envision the record moving. That's like an easy way to break a tie or to steer in a direction where there's uncertainty, which is not to say that like I also we don't like overrule me because that there are a lot of times where I mean on this record like I wanted to start the record at the very beginning and tell this like story of childhood and move into a history of our hometown and introduce the record via the song Environmental Catastrophe film. And it was Brad, I think our drummer, who suggested to me that we maybe push that back and sort of drop immediately into the present action of the record. And I had to like reframe how I was considering things after a long
Sure.
time of having it set a certain way in my brain. And I think that ended up being one of the more important decisions for how the record feels.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. Yeah, it would have changed
so
everything if you
like,
had to start it that way.
yeah, yeah. So I just think like you, I mean, you're five people making music. You're five people with an idea of how things should go. It is a collaborative process, and the beauty of having done it together for so long is that we feel confident that we can voice concerns. We have trust in everyone's ability to do what they do as well as they can, and everybody's opinion is valued and considered. So we're at a point where it's just like all of that stuff is pretty easy to navigate. I think easier than it's ever been.
Yeah, rad. How do you think the band's approach to what La Dispute is has changed over time from where you were to start with, the first teenagers bringing out music, to where you are today? What's changed in the way you approach things and what you want people to take away from the band?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's hard to recapture an urgency you feel at an early stage of committing to making not just art, but like making punk rock or whatever, being in a band. You're like motivated, I think, by recklessness that comes from attempting at that age to like figure out who you are and who you want to be and where you want to go, and you're a little bit removed from the responsibilities you begin to feel as you age, and the external factors that influence your life. And I think that the early records are what they are because that's who we were and that's what drove us. And I think the older we've gotten, the more we just understand the utility it holds in our lives and how essential it is to who we are to get together and to make art and give it away. And I think that is probably the biggest thing that's changed, is that we're just like, we consider more, and not like we didn't in the past, but like you're more careful about how you, I don't know, you become like, you become better at what you do at every step, you know, like
Yeah.
you think about things differently, and you learn more and you experience more, and it becomes a little bit more technical in its execution. You want to be uh you start to like actually see yourself as a musician, as an artist, and you feel confident saying so, which in the early days you're just like, I'm in a hardcore band or whatever, and you just like want to be on the road and play shows, and none of that has really changed so much as uh, the approach has matured.
Yeah.
Matured is
Okay.
maybe a bad word, or a little
Mm.
dismissive of earlier stuff, but like I don't know, I think that we're just like, we're better at what we do. We just like are more equipped. We're better musicians, and
You've grown.
uh, I think we've grown. Yeah, and that's like the big difference. I mean, the reasons we do it haven't changed. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
still like, still. I mean, it is a career. It is like the way we put bread on the table for the most part. But like, that's not why we do it. That's never changed. But
It's a
yeah,
fun
I think
side
that you
effect.
just like, it's a fun side effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you do like, you consider it a little bit more, but it doesn't compromise the original intent behind anything. And I'm not sure if I even answered your question. I just think we're better
You
at
did.
making music, and good.
You've,
We're
you've gone
like, uh,
essentially to dumb it down. You've gone with the same approach
yeah,
the whole time. You've just
yeah.
gotten better at what you do along the way.
We just gotten better at what we do, and we communicate better, and we pay attention to how we're feeling more, and we have open conversations, and
That's cool.
I think we're more mindful of everybody's physical and emotional health, and just like trying to create an environment that allows us to keep doing it and still be happy doing it.
It sounds like you've got a very healthy band, which can't always be said. So that's a cool thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a difficult dynamic to manage because you're a family
Yeah,
in a lot of
100%.
ways, and we're lucky that we've just like, I think more than anything, remained important people to each other and close friends, and I think, again, having like that time when we weren't able to do it was a good reminder that it still matters to us and that we want to keep doing it for a
Yeah.
while at least.
Hell yeah. All right. I'm going to finish with, again, it's a rather broad question. Sorry about this. But what is one thing
No,
you
you're good.
hope people take away from the album? No one was driving the car. If you could have had one thing, one idea that you hope people would take away from this, what is it?
Sure. I mean, I'm always hesitant to like consider a message underlying things. I think the strength of my contribution to the band is observation, and I think I'm more focused than anything on just capturing a feeling of being alive and telling stories that speak in one way or another to the human experience. I think that if I do hope that like, there's a lot of there's a lot of despair on the record. There's a lot of, in all of our records, there's a lot of complicated but dark feelings, and I think ultimately it ends in a place of like hopeful resignation. And I think the contrast of the record's end being, the world is different now in a bad way. We're in some apocalyptic landscape, post whatever, but like still able to find a peace in being alive and connecting through the people you love to something that gives you value, gives your life meaning. I think that's ultimately the end note of the record is like it can be pretty terrible, but life is also full of beauty and joy, and that the only way we like go forward in a meaningful way, in a productive way, is to remember that, to be aware of the great things in our lives. So I guess that's ultimately, if there's anything I hope people take away from it, it's that.
Do you ever? I'm doubling down my own questions here. But do you ever worry that like because you
Yeah,
do
yeah.
write about despair and the hopelessness is not the right word, but there is a lot of darkness to your lyrics. Do you ever worry that you like focus too much on the dark and that there needs to be some light, or is that just you like they're the best stories to tell?
Sometimes. I mean, sometimes I do, but I also think that like those are as important to life and to the way we experience it as the other. Like, I don't think it's my obligation to like, I don't know. I think that like life is so hard. And I don't think that we give enough consideration to its violence and to what befalls people and to the tragedies we experience, or even to the inevitability of our death, you know? Like, I think
Yeah,
we're so uh averse in a lot of ways to really exploring the dark parts of our lives in a way without some degree of remove. We love to watch horror movies because they elicit, I think, that response in us, but they aren't anything nearly as horrifying as the reality of our existences sometimes. And I think that like the older I get, the more I feel like it's important to talk about those things and to have conversations and to not just talk about them, but like to understand that there's like there's value in grief, and there's beauty in tragedy, and life is all of those component parts. We shouldn't focus entirely on what brings us immediate joy so much as we should figure out how to find it in everything. And that to me feels like the only antidote to despairing 24/7 is like trying to find a balance and trying to like learn from what happens and move forward. So I don't know. I do sometimes think like perhaps this doesn't like the way I present lyrics and song doesn't accurately capture my worldview, because I am talking about a lot of terrible shit, and I'm generally a fairly happy person and have a lot of great things in my life. So I don't want to give the wrong impression about how life is for me, but I just think about those things a lot, and I think it's important to.
without the sour, the sweet wouldn't taste so sweet.
Yeah,
That's a quote that for me, like I've read when I was like 15 and just stuck in my head. I was
sure.
like, that's a cool
Yeah,
perspective. I like that. It's a
really. Yeah.
real dumbed down way of what you just said.
No, but it's true. Yeah. I think it speaks to something. Yeah, for sure.
Well, Jordan, dude, thank you for taking the time. As I said, I
Of course.
think No One's Driving the Car is a triumph.
Thank you.
You are unique both as an individual and as a band in the way you present art. And I think it's so important to have bands like you doing what you do and
Thank
telling
you.
these stories in such a unique way. And I hope the album is a triumph for you guys commercially as well as just like live and for your actual fans. And it means more to come.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I appreciate that, man. Thank you for the kind words. Thanks for taking the time out. Thanks for the conversation. I had a great time. Really appreciate it.
Of course, man. And we'll look forward to seeing you play back in Oz sometime soon.
Yeah, I think next year sometime, but don't quote me on that because I'm not looking at the calendar and I can't think
Quoted.
very far ahead.
Got
But yeah,
it.
we'll be back. You know, we'll be back.
Yeah.
Australia knows how we feel about Australia, so
This album's like
yeah,
partially
I hope it.
recorded here, wasn't it?
Yeah, we recorded it in Australia, and we
Yeah.
wrote part of it in Australia. So we there's actual tangible fingerprints of us
I knew there
throughout,
was
and
some bad stuff in
one
there.
of us lives in Australia. So yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's an important place to us. We'll definitely be playing a bunch of fucking shows.
Look forward to having you back.
Look forward to coming back, man. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.